Hey everyone, welcome. It's Ben from Songwriters on Process. Today we've got my interview with Chuck Prophet. Chuck is based out in San Francisco and he has written many albums. By my count, 15 solo albums, at least another 10 with various groups, probably more than that. And it was a great conversation. One of the things that really struck me, I've interviewed people who have been around for 50 years and people who have been around for only a couple. And I've always noticed that the people who have been around the longest are those who really treat the songwriting process as work. They're dedicated to it. They go to a specific room and they write. They have a ritual, and as you'll see from our talk today, Chuck certainly adheres to that. He's got some great stories as well. He's got some great parts of his ritual. If you, at some point in the video, he shows us his pens and his notebooks and the books that he's reading, so it's kind of a visual tour as well of his process. He likes to sit in his in a Ford Econoline bench that he took out of the van a while ago, and that's where he sits and writes a lot of his songs. And so we'll talk about that as well. We've talked about writing, who he likes to read, and again, I think he's got a very specific part to his process as far as the ritual, but he doesn't really know where the songs come from, and that's fine. But again, I think I want to stress that it's those that really have been around the longest that treat songwriting as a job rather than waiting for the muse to come. Prophet has a new album coming out. I believe it's August 21st, called The Land That Time Forgot. It's out on Yep Rock Records. So check out my website, Songwriters on Process. There are close to 200 interviews with songwriters strictly about the writing process. I started it 10 years ago. There are no ads. It's all free. And everyone from, Nils Lofgren to Roseanne Cash to Courtney Barnett to Mark Morton from Lamb of God. So check that out as well. I'd love to see your comments also, and tell me who you'd like to see me interview down the road. But my goal here is to, as long as we're stuck in the houses and no one is touring, post new interviews at least every week. So thanks for watching and hope you enjoy. Yeah, so let's get started. So the first question I like to ask all songwriters is, how much writing are you doing outside of songwriting? Any type of writing, whether it's journaling, or how much writing do you do outside of songwriting?
Well, I've been traveling. I mean, I think like in 1995 or something, around 1997 or something, I got clean,
Yeah.
And I wandered. I live in San Francisco, so I would wander in and out of these coffee shops, and I noticed that these people had these like laptops, and I thought, well, maybe that's something I can do. I didn't really know what it was, but I was lost, and I had to totally reinvent myself, and so I got one of those early laptops, and I corresponded a lot with people, so I think a lot of writing comes from my correspondence. And I like it, and especially with, the amount that I toured overseas, you can be kind of isolated. So, a lot of my writing is, I would say a lot of my writing is correspondence. And, and it's kind of disappointing when people want to text, because I'm like, hey, man, I'd like to use a little bold. I like to use italics occasionally. I can't make my point,
Right.
And pretty soon it's just going to be abbreviations. There won't be any words. People will just grunt at each other.
I know.
So that's where a lot of my writing is, and I can't say that I've ever really been somebody that keeps a journal per se. I keep a date book, and yeah.
Now, when you mean
always have something to read. I always have something to read. In my backpack, and it's like I always have to have something to read, and I don't think I'm any different than most people in that respect.
Well, that was going to be my last question, but since you brought it up, we'll talk about it now. I do find that songwriters are voracious readers, and probably much more than the general public. I mean, so tell me, who are some of the writers? Who are some of your go-tos? Who are you reading now? Yeah, who do you like to read?
Well, I very much, when I was young, I really liked Bukowski, and he led me to John Fonte. And I definitely, read a lot of popular stuff like Elmore Leonard, and, my my tastes are not that highfalutin, you know, in that respect. But you know, my thing is use the smallest word you can and use as few of them as you can. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Why do you know? I think Bukowski always comes up with songwriters. Kurt Vonnegut and Cormac McCarthy tend to be like the three that they love and gravitate towards. So why do you think, you know, why do you think that is? And maybe do you think those writers have influenced your songwriting in any way?
I mean, I think everything really influences my songwriting because if I have my antenna up, then I'm just, you know, I'm desperate. You know, I mean, I'm looking for that idea, and I don't really know where it's going to come from. I think the thing about reading is that, especially like lately, is because you know television and other ways to consume stories, because of the tropes and because you know inevitably within 15 minutes you kind of feel like, oh, I've seen this before, you
Yeah.
know, and so it's not going to really bring you the unexpected. You know, it's like watching Law and Order, like the 150th episode of Law and Order. You're like, yeah, I think I got this, you know,
Yeah, right.
because you know because they've got they've got their they've got the structure of what works for them, and the same goes with songwriting. You know, like that's kind of one of my things about. I was talking to a mutual friend, songwriter, and we were talking about a couple very successful Nashville songwriters. And they'll do things like, oh, here's where we need the channel, and here's where we need the thing. And my friend's like, look, I won't name the names, but everything you turn in is getting cut. So, you know, you have the opportunity to break some rules and take it somewhere. People will follow you. But, you know, it's really easy to fall into those sort of comfortable structures that are known to work. So
Yeah. So, you know, wondering some of those authors, do you think it's the economy of language? I don't find anyone really citing Jane Austen or Faulkner as an influence. You know, songwriters tend to like those, you know, the Bukowskis, the Vonnegut's, where the short word, every word counts, like tremendous word economy.
well, Faulkner's a lot of work, but I think it's worth it. You know,
Absolutely.
and you know, it's like um, somebody once asked Mary Carr recently, you know, the great memoirist from Texas. They said, you know, what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to, you know, write memoirs? She goes, well, don't read Mary Carr.
Yeah.
and she threw a few other names out there. She says, you know, read above your weight class.
Right.
You know, so I mean, I'm reading some Stevie. You know, this morning I was reading some Stevie Smith poetry, and
Oh, nice.
I mean, you know, I mean, I try to read above my weight class occasionally, but yeah, I mean, I think the people that I return to, like Elmore Leonard, you know, are people that can capture the voice of a character, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm as interested in that as much as I'm interested in, you know, poetry or doing those kind of cartwheels across the page, you know.
Yeah. Wait, so do you read, I saw you just showed me a book of poetry, but do you read a lot of poetry?
Not really, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say a lot, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what's around here, you know. There's some magazines. There's a film, a book on film. Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis. I don't know. I think that was a gift, and you know, I mean, shit, I don't know. You know, I mean, a lot of, you know, I used to read a lot of true crime, but you know, my therapist is like, you shouldn't be reading that stuff before you go to bed.
Yeah, seriously.
And I said, you know, how much am I paying you?
Right, right. I forgot, was it Elmore Leonard that has that rules of writing? And was he the one that said, don't use any word other than said when a character speaks? I think that was.
Don't say that she replied emphatically.
Yes.
And that also might be Stephen King as well.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah, I think it was
Stop
Leonard.
describing what they're fucking wearing and just let them talk.
Yeah, yeah.
People, you know, and especially with the economy of songwriting.
Right. Are you a Hemingway fan?
Oh, I was definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's that same kind of that same vein.
And you know, when I think of Hemingway, I think of Hunter S. Thompson. I heard that you know, I once read there's a couple things that I learned, and that is when Bob Dylan received that copy of Robert Johnson's King of the Delta Blues from John Hammond. You know, he talks about it in his book Chronicles, about how it just like, you know, blew his mind.
Yeah.
I had heard that Bob, you know, wrote the whole record out by hand.
Yeah. Wow.
And I'd also heard that, and that just kind of clicked in my brain, because I'd heard that when Hunter S. Thompson was in the service, he typed out a complete Hemingway novel.
Oh, really?
So I think it's Ezra Pound that said, fill your mind with the noble rhythms, or whatever the expression is. Maybe you can help me on that one.
Yeah, I know. I did read a lot of Pound. My PhD.
That's it. You know, fill your heart with the noble rhythms, you know?
Yeah.
And I think Hunter S. Thompson was really trying to get that cadence of the short sentences that Hemingway was known for. And he didn't, you know, he may not have known why it spoke to him, but it just did.
What people don't understand about Hemingway is that he wrote as such a direct response to what came before him, that while his style may not seem unique now, no one really wrote like that before him. I mean, he sat down to say, you know, I'm not going to write like Fitzgerald. I'm not going to write like X, like Y. I'm going to write in a totally new style. And while people, like I said, it may not be hugely, you know, it's nothing new now, but back then, no one had ever seen anything like that before. You know, that style. But he sat down directly to say, I'm going to write against what people are doing now. But so you don't read a lot of poetry. Most songwriters don't. I don't know. I've always found that surprising, I guess. Just given
I have my favorites, like, that I return to, like Dennis Johnson and you know, some Jim Carroll. I mean, Jim Carroll's sort of, for me, the curse of the self-educated, which is probably my curse. You know.
Yeah.
You know, I work a lot with a poet, Kurt Lipschutz. His pen name is Clipschutz. So, you know, I'm probably influenced by him.
Yeah.
You know, some Jim Harrison, if I'm into the tough guy nature stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, you know. I read a lot of Harry Crews through the years. You know, I just learned that, like, a lot of the Harry Crews novels are not even in print. You know?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
You get old, man. Records that you thought, you know, records that you thought were that had to be in every home are now, like, out of print, you know. And you're like, how can that be?
That's very true. I know. So back to your writing. You mentioned something earlier about the antennas, and I guess do you you know, songwriters, I think you always have to be consciously aware of your surroundings to soak things in. But I guess, are you consciously aware? Are you always, when your antenna are up, does that mean you're always consciously looking at things, or are things kind of subconsciously soaking in? Because I think there's a difference there. Is there?
Well, I tend to write in clusters, you know. I mean, I got an office probably 15 years ago, and I would write there and just leave the papers on the ground, you know. And my life, it sort of improved the quality of my life, you know, and slow down a little bit, you know, just slow down and come home and maybe cook or something. And, you know, and this is all part of me kind of trying to have some kind of quality of life and just sort of protect my mental health a little bit.
Yeah.
So when I get hot, I'm hot, you know. And I can't really explain that. I mean, sometimes I'll be working on a cluster, like 3 songs, and there'll be problems, and maybe I'll hit some dead. And then there's just days when I just feel like I'm hot, like I can solve any problem that's in front of me. But, you know, I mean, that happens. Not nearly enough, but it does happen.
Yeah. Now, when you say clusters, are you working? Yeah, talk about that. Do you mean a certain number of songs or a certain time period? What do you mean by clusters?
Well, I write albums, you know.
Yeah.
Of course, I do a lot of co-writing. I write on assignment. You know, I've written a lot of things for film and television over the years with a gun to my head. You know, I've written under all kinds of circumstances. But I mean, generally, I'm moving towards an album. You know, so I'm writing. I'm playing around. I'm playing around with musical styles. I'm doing a lot of listening, and you know, and if I get somewhere where I maybe got some songs, I'll figure, well, you know, I'll reward myself with some demos.
Yeah.
maybe get a few musicians together, and just kind of throw the chord changes out and hear what they sound like coming out of the big speakers, and that can be kind of a reward, and that can kind of help me see what is floating to the top and what is just, I'll just, you know, push through, you know.
Yeah.
And so now, you know, if I find myself like, oh, I got 2 or 3 songs that are kind of a different musical style, or there's something thematically or something about the content that I feel is like fresh, then I might get excited, you know, and I'm like, oh, that could be a thing, you know. I mean, all my records have some sort of theme. Maybe I don't know about it, or maybe I had to invent it when it came out for the press release, or maybe, you know, 6 months later, people started telling me what it was. I said, oh yeah, that's what it was, you know. Sometimes a theme will emerge, but there's generally something like that that's at work, you know. And then I'm like, gee, I got a lot of slow songs. It'd be nice to write an upbeat song, or, you know, that's too bad. We got anything around here, you know? And so then I'll start trying to cast the record like a movie, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm working in clusters, you know, maybe 3 songs at a time. Yeah, that's not untypical for me.
Yeah. Now you mentioned fresh. Like, how do you know how do you know when you hit on something fresh, when something is, when you hear, like, what really, what makes you hear something and say, yeah, like that works? Like, what is it about? What define fresh to me, I guess?
It just maybe takes me somewhere I've never been before.
Okay.
And, you know, to the average person, if they stand back and squint, they're like, oh, it just sounds like Chuck Prophet to me, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be something musically, or something about the groove underneath the song's feet, or
Yeah.
something about the, you know, yeah, something about it stylistically.
Yeah. You mentioned push through a few minutes ago, and that's a common thing that I hear songwriters say. I mean, pushing through. So I guess when you come up against an idea that just isn't happening, do you, you know, is your thought just to push through until you get somewhere? Or when do you know, is there a time when you get to something that's not working, you go, okay, I need to set this aside?
Well, I probably set them all. I mean, I'm probably at this stage of the game, you know, um, I'm probably too sensitive to resistance. Like, oh, a little resistance here, I'll just put it down, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think I try as hard as I used to.
So you give up too easily.
Yeah, I don't think I try as hard as
Yeah. Well, you know, I feel like people fall into 2 camps. It's, you know, do you give up? Is there a time when you say, okay, it's not working, I'll set it aside, maybe come back to it in a week, or maybe come back to it in a year or 2, see if it works in another song, or people say, I'm going to push through.
Oh, I've worked songs over, you know, I don't know. I think there's a song on my new record that I wrote with Kim Ritchie. It's at least probably 10 years old.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very small idea, you know, it was a very small idea. I just didn't find anything that had that, what's that French word for one of a kind? You know, there was nothing about it that just made it feel like it was a one of a kind song, you know, and yet there was something about it that I felt was worth revisiting. And my new record, you know, we already had a couple presidential songs.
Yeah.
And so I'd written this song about Lincoln's body, you know, doing the circuitous route from Springfield to DC back to Springfield, and how people came out to the train tracks and bowed their heads and dressed in their finest. And the newspapers advertised the train schedule so people could go out and pay their respects.
Yeah.
And it was called Paying My Respects to the Train, but the music was kind of not really original. And I don't know, I just kind of started kicking it around, and I just felt like, oh, this really belongs on this album.
Yeah.
And then I got excited about it, and that was enough.
Yeah. When it comes time to writing, I'm always interested. I love reading the Paris Review and reading the interviews they do with writers and talking about the idea of a ritual. Do you have a writing ritual? Are there certain maybe times of day, places, things you need to have with you, you know, when you tend to get your best writing done, or is that not important?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are times historically, you know, I look at a record like Let Freedom Ring, a record that I wrote during the last financial meltdown. And I know that I remember what happened. We had done a fairly fairly long, pretty grueling European tour. And when I got home, my body clock was still turned around, so I was waking up at 3 a.m, you know. And I just started going down to my office at like 4 or 5 a.m. And, you know, as a result of that, I would write for like 4 or 5 hours before, you know, one phone call or anything came in, you know, to distract me. And I just remember being like really hot, you know, I just remember being really hot then. I remember everything falling into place. And I just remember it as a creative burst, you know. Now I can start setting my body clock and resetting it to 4 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't mean that it's, you know, I'm going to have the same luck, but generally in the day before, I mean, I generally would like to get going early before all the distractions of the day set in, you know, before lunch. I like
Fine to early. What does early mean for a song?
As soon as they get up, you know?
Yeah. Can you write for long stretches?
You know, I mean, it's hard to concentrate for more than 4 hours.
Yeah.
After that, you know, you can kick things around and, you know, print it out, maybe change a comma and then print it out again, you know.
Change a comma. Wait a minute. Hold on. I've never heard songwriters talk about commas before.
Well, it's an expression that writers, you know, that I've heard writers say, like,
oh yeah, really? Oh, okay.
He's the kind of guy, he'll change one comma and then he'll print it out again.
Right.
So you start, you know, you start looking for any small reward.
Yeah.
And I tend to mark things up and then reprint them out. You know, I write the date on the page. Maybe I'll write the date on the page.
Yeah.
And I'll write the song in a red Sharpie, and then, you know, those things just kind of pile up. So I revisit songs over time a lot.
Yeah. Well, is there a place, room, you know, certain chair, couch, room?
Yeah, I have an office. I mean, I have an office.
Yeah.
What it is sort of a rehearsal studio, but it's got natural light. It's a very small place downtown, and there's a Ford Econoline bench that I took out of the van. So I sit on this Ford Econoline bench, and that's when I can, you know, that's where I find my mojo, if I find them at all.
You know, I interviewed John Darnielle from the Mountain Goats about 2 years ago, and he used that exact word you said. He wrote his last album at the dinner table because that's where the mojo was.
Yeah.
And I, you know, as a writer myself, I think that's important. I think for me, it's an element of confidence that if it's happened, if I've had success there before, why not go back there again? You know,
absolutely. I mean, we all attach irrational things to, because, you know, the table didn't come here. You know, you could tell John that the table probably didn't have a lot to do with it. You know,
right?
But you know, good luck getting him to believe that. I mean, the thing is that I play the same guitar. If I have a lucky spot, I'll return to it. You know, if I have a certain kind of pen. I have all these irrational attachments that I believe make it possible. And I believe that if everybody had a guitar like mine, then I'd be pumping gas for sure. You know?
Of course. But the bench, though, because clearly you could have gotten a cheap bench or couch or chair from somewhere, but why the bench?
Well, it's got no arms on it, so it's easy to play guitar.
Okay.
You know, you don't want a chair with arms, and it just, you know, it had to go somewhere. It had to be stored somewhere. And so, you know, there it is. I can also lay down on it, you know.
Yeah. See?
I don't know why. There's a couple more comfortable chairs in my office, but yeah, the bench.
Yeah, I think all that stuff is important. Now, you mentioned natural light. I mean, a lot of people say that too, that even that element of, for whatever it is, you know, being able to look out the window, you know, may make a big difference as well. You know, I think it all makes a difference. So you mentioned pens, and I told someone this recently. I could do an entire website devoted to the pens and pencils and types of paper that songwriters use. You guys are fanatical about now you may not be, but I could tell you stories about the brand of pen, the color of ink, and the type of paper. You've already mentioned that once. So is there a certain type, a certain color that you like, that you tend to return to?
Well, I like the black micro point.
Okay.
Know? And, you know, I mean, I think there should be, you know, 3 or 4 of them here. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I like typewriter paper. You know, see if I got a song here. I was gonna.
Wait, so hold on. You write on typewriter paper?
Well, first I print the song out.
Okay.
And then, yeah, like, you know, first I print the song out, and then I just mark it up. You know?
Okay. Oh, gotcha. Okay, so you're doing the first drafts then actually on a typewriter or a computer?
Yeah, on a laptop.
Okay.
On a printer. You know.
Okay.
Then I mark it up. But then there's also, you know, there's also these guys.
Yeah.
So you gotta have these guys because if you open up the laptop, you know, God knows what distraction you're gonna find in there.
Right. So what's in those journals? Ideas, or are you know, because I find those are the random.
Yeah, I mean, there's ideas, and there's, you know, ideas for videos or I don't just tons of, like, I don't know, what do we got? Other people's songs, you know.
Yeah. Do you like to return to those if maybe for inspiration if things aren't clicking?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I get a little comfort in these things, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I get a little comfort because I also keep I keep the calendars in here.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
So that's a little. There's a little comfort in that. Like, oh,
Yeah.
that's when I went there, and that's when I did that. And, oh, I see. Okay. You know. Gosh, you know. Yeah. I mean, no wonder. You know, it's like sometimes I don't know where I've been or what I'm doing. You know.
Old school. Now you did say typewriter paper. I want to confirm you did mean printer paper, not actually.
Yeah, printer paper that you get.
Okay.
Printer paper that you get at the drugstore.
I don't know. You can find typewriter paper anymore.
Oh, right. Yeah, printer paper.
Yeah.
Plain. I think it's called plain.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But I mean, I do think. I mean, I had a songwriter tell me recently that they didn't like to use blue ink because it makes it look like high school writing or something like that, and only black ink would do. So yeah, all that stuff I think as a ritual, you know, tends to, you know, I think it for, you know, that's why I think I'm interested in it, because that element of comfort that it gives people, at least that sense of confidence. So
yeah, I mean, I like the micro points because you can write really small, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm left-handed, so you know everything's a mess. You know?
Yeah, I know, it really is. All that ink on the hand. I mean,
yeah, it's just a mess. It's hopeless.
Do you find that movement tends to be an effective maybe tool for ideas? Whether a lot of people talk about, you know, when they're in a bus, in a van, on a train, on a plane, anything like that, for whatever reason, the role of movement tends to get people inspired. Do you ever find that happens?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've all had that experience, maybe a train ride where, you know, you get a toasty sandwich or something, and, you know, you're reading, and just, you know, 3 hours fly by, and it's you know, it's bliss.
Yeah.
I don't understand the passing of time, how, you know, when you're moving, things kind of compress, and it can be kind of blissful, and that's a nice place to write.
Yeah.
I wrote an entire album with a group called the Rubinoos, and their main songwriter is this guy, Tommy Dunbar, who was a real hero of mine. And he lives in Sacramento. I live in San Francisco. And I discovered that I could California's not very train centric, you know?
Right.
But I discovered that I could take the Amtrak train to his place. About a 2-hour journey, I guess. And it's just heaven.
Yeah.
You know, and I would start the journey unprepared, and then by the time I would get to his place in Sacramento, I'd have 5 ideas that I wanted to work on.
Yeah. You know, I take the train a lot for work, and I find also that the train is a great place because I know that I have a finite amount of time to get stuff done. If I sat down here for 3 hours, I probably wouldn't write nearly enough as taking the train from New York to DC or vice versa, because I know that when a journey ends, I've got to stop writing. So I find, for me at least, it's that sense of I have to get this done by a certain time.
Yeah.
That's
another thing that's something also about co-writing for me, is I'm put on the spot, you know?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And
it's a deadline, and you're like, you know, I don't want to show up empty-handed.
Yeah, yeah. Do you, when you're, how often do things you read or maybe, hear, how often do those work their way into songs for you? It could be billboards, could be lines, could
A
be,
lot. Yeah.
do they?
I mean,
Yeah,
a lot. Yeah. I mean, oftentimes musically too, it's like, I'm sitting on some riff. I know it's not original, and I don't really care.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't really care because inevitably we're going to take this ride together. And by the time we get to where we're going, it's going to be unrecognizable.
yeah,
There
yeah,
may be some of the DNA of the original riff in there, but, you have to have faith that the process is going to take it somewhere.
yeah,
People say, "Oh, that sounds a little like this," or "It sounds a little like that." It's like, don't worry about it. By the
yeah,
time by the time we rotate the tires a couple times and look under the hood and change a few parts, it's gonna be its own thing. So
yeah.
yeah.
And you're okay with it being, how often do songs end up being, very different in the finished product from what they were when you first demoed them?
Oh, they end up radically different.
They
I mean,
do.
I tend to. Yeah, it's very rare that an arrangement, comes with the song. It's very rare for me.
Yeah. So the new album, was there a song on the new album that stood out as being the easiest one to write that was just, you know, really stands out? I'm looking for stories here about the songs on the new album.
Well, yeah, I think Best Shirt On. I mean, I co-wrote that with my friend Kurt, and we were, you know, as is the typical day for us, we were arguing about where we were going to eat lunch, and that song just kind of emerged, and there was like a verse, and I didn't really have the melody, and I'd been listening to a lot of Beach Boys, so I kind of filled out the melody with a kind of oh, which I thought would later be words. So it was like sometimes I fall oh, just I was just it was I was just scatting my way through it,
Yeah.
but we kind of finished it. We had a couple verses, and I just put it aside. And then when I demoed it, it really came alive. There was more song there than I thought, and uh, a lot of that credit goes to Matt Weiniger, who had a little studio in Oakland, and just the two of us demoed the song. And yeah, so it was one of those things, like, very simple. And then after the song came out, I went through all these lengths to explain to people what the song was about, but I wasn't thinking about that at the time.
Yeah, right, of course. What about a song what was the most difficult song for you to write, that maybe a song that you wanted to give up on but kept on pushing through? You maybe thought this isn't coming. There's one song stand as being one that was really, really torturous.
Well, I mean, paying my respects to the Train had been through several iterations, and I'd even done a version of it. Now, come to think of it, I did a version of it on a record from 2008, I think. And to have spent that many years playing with that Rubik's cube, and trying to get it to behave, is pretty remarkable, really. I mean, so that was difficult. Kurt and I wrote a song. I brought in a title, "Womankind," and I think it came from a conversation I was having when I said that how much I admired Tom Petty's ability to write for women. Even a guy that he didn't have any sisters.
Oh, yeah.
But yet, on the first record, I mean, he came out of the gate with American Girl.
Yeah.
And, he really sees that through the eyes of the girl in the song. And I think that's pretty remarkable. It says a lot about him. It's like what David Mamet says, when it's the rules of acting are, when it's your time to be on, be on.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
no more excuses. There's the microphone, you got the deal, show up with a song,
Got to do it.
And,
yeah.
and so the people that really come out of the gate on their first record are there's a special place for those guys, because I certainly don't feel like I came out of the gate with anything that great. And to think that that's the last song that they played.
Yeah.
It was like the second encore at the Greek Theater, at the Greek in LA, and that was the last song they played. So I came in with that title, Womankind, and we couldn't really get. Then it sort of turned into, man made this and man made that. He made the blow up doll. He made the iron. Man made this. Man made that. He made this. He made the blow up doll. He made the iron fist, but he didn't make the wind and he didn't make the rain, or the cold sunshine on a winter's day. But it became a song about women and God, like in an interchangeable way. And it got very confused, and we just couldn't see eye to eye on it. So I kind of went off by myself and finished that, and nobody was too excited about it. But then, it ended up being, because I just kind of had faith in the idea. It ended up being a song I'm really proud of, and it's a song that I really like playing solo.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned you came in with a title, so the song started as a title before anything else, or
yeah.
Does that happen often for you?
I might have the odd title from time to time, or I just kind of, I had that title because I felt like it made a nice Post-it note, just kind of a reminder that it would be great to write song that in the wake of where we are right now. I mean, my attitude is that men had a good run. I mean, there was a time that the world was like a Bon Jovi song, and that if you were strong enough to lift some heavy docks down at lift heavy boxes down at the docks,
right,
then you were the man. Well, that time has come and gone. They've got forklifts now, and women are probably safer forklift drivers. Women are better managers. Women work well with others. They're more educated at this point. And so it's really kind of the end of mankind,
Yeah.
As we know it,
Right.
And we had a good run, and and you look to our problems in Washington, and I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
A lot of men just don't feel they are necessary anymore.
What challenges, or what challenges does starting with the title present? I don't hear that very often, that songwriters start with the title, but what challenges does that present, or how does that change the process for you? I mean,
well, oftentimes when people write from a title, you can smell it, because it'll be the last line,
Yeah.
Like, if I was to say, like, I'm gonna write a song called "Sharp Dressed Man."
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's it's gonna go here, it's gonna go here, and then it's gonna go here, and then it's gonna go. Right. Everybody's crazy about a sharp dressed man. And then a riff, So when you can see that some songs are written backwards from the title, and I don't love it,
Yeah.
But sometimes it works. I don't lean on it.
Yeah. So are things that you do then to try to ensure that it doesn't look like you wrote backwards from the title, or is that just?
You just try to get lucky, You just try to not do anything with so many breadcrumbs that people see it coming a mile away, and it takes the fun out of it for them.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I don't watch these TV shows because it's like I see everything coming a mile away.
I know.
For me, I don't think I'm smart, or I don't think I'm better than anybody. It's just that, like, if you've seen 10 Storage Wars,
right.
It's you're not going to get surprised.
Right, that's true. So last question, I think. The revision, you showed me a bunch of papers, and I'm curious, with markings, do you revise a lot of your lyrics? Is revision a pretty heavy part of your process?
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Now, you say that with a note of frustration.
Yeah, I've been told, like, oh, Chuck, yeah, he's the king of the rewrites. I don't know.
Yeah.
It takes what it takes.
Yeah. Are you just moving words around? Are you changing words, or all that stuff?
Especially when I'm getting to that place where I really want it to sing well.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, a lot of songwriters, I don't know if they experience, I play a lot of gigs,
Yeah.
I could be, there could be a line that's not really working for me, and it's like syllabically, it's not really like grooving. It doesn't feel good in your mouth, and it doesn't really, the cadence of it kind of breaks the pattern, and kind of has the, and might end up breaking the spell for the listener.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, how do you know when a song is done? Is there a certain time? Is there anything you feel in your bones when a song is done, besides the deadline?
I can't say it's any one thing. I mean, I'm still thinking about the rewrites.
Yeah.
Well, my point is that a lot of people, they may not go out and play 100 shows.
Yeah.
And I have some songs that I play at every gig, and like if I somehow compromised or was lazy or didn't listen to the song enough to really live in it, then I'm not going to enjoy being out there singing it 100 nights.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you'll say this line doesn't work, and every night you'll be reminded
of the existing couplets that you have. Is there a couplet or a line that you are the most proud of? Do you have one that's your favorite that you just go, yeah, that is pretty damn good?
Well, there's strange things, like you have a song, Ford Econoline, and Brad Jones used to like that the rhyme for Econoline was a warm inside. I said, I have no idea where that came from.
Right.
It's like I'm not going to find it in a rhyming dictionary, but yeah, when I think back, it makes me feel warm inside. Ford Econoline, and Brad I just love the things that I pull out of the air.
Yeah.
Those are the things I'm most proud of, rather than the things that laid down nice on paper.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a song called "Would You Love Me," which is kind of a song of unrequited love, and it takes you through Elvis and Anna Nicole Smith and Jesus Christ, and I'm always, when I sing that song, I'm proud of it, because I remember the ease at which I wrote it, and it makes me feel good, and I feel like it was honest, and but I couldn't nail it down to one,
Right. That's a good story though, because as you were saying that warm inside Econoline, I'm trying to think about why that works. It's also the
warm inside Ford Econoline. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But I kind of like that it's almost the internal rhyming a little bit that works at the end of the word.
It's like, and it's what happens when you write when you're doing the music and the melody and everything at the same time.
Yeah.
When these kind of subconscious things come out, and that's something that's very rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like, I mean, I had a song called, one time I had a blues song called Automatic Blues, and I had written so many verses for it. And it was one of those songs, like it was a blues. It was like Sharp Dressed Man, like, the end of every tag was going to be Automatic Blues. And so I went through all these different situations where automation was giving me the blues or whatever. And I wrote it over a long period of time. And I played it for a friend of mine. I said, yeah, I got all these verses. And he said to me, he goes, well, he said, she walks like Bo Diddley. She don't need no crutch. And I realized at that point that I'd kind of like sucked all the poetry out of it.
Yeah.
By being so determined for the song to make sense,
Yeah.
And when something ends up making too much sense, then you've taken all the poetry out of it. You want to make sense, but you don't want to make too much sense.
Yeah.
And that's always the struggle. You're balancing the whole thing on the head of a pin. So you just got to remind yourself from time to time. She walks like Bo Diddley. She don't need no crutch.
Yeah.